So I call it scary and frightening. That's why the Obama speech was very similar about 12 years ago on these attacks on the Supreme Court. And Andy brings up a really good point. We're going to play the Chuck Schumer sound. We're going to play the Biden sound. We're going to play the Obama sound. But before we do, the direct attack on the Supreme was aimed at Roe versus Wade. But you made up a very good point, and that is they can't really say anything back other than their opinions.
This is an attack on Biden's part of a coward. Biden is a coward. You make an attack upon an institution that cannot reply, that is limited to what they say in writing in their opinions. And you looked at those pitiful justices, I thought, pitiful in one sense that they couldn't talk, but strong in the fact that they were sitting there just staring because they were intimidated or attempted to be intimidated by no less than the President of the United States. And they couldn't speak back.
Let's first play again, for those that are just joining us, this is what Joe Biden said last night about Roe versus Wade and the Supreme Court with the justices in front of him.
It's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you were right about.
So what I didn't like about that was, he could have said, I disagree with the court's opinion in Roe versus Wade, but with due respect to the justice sitting in front of him, and then he threatens them with, you're about to see what their political power is. Cece?
Which is, again, ridiculous because we don't vote for any justice of the Supreme Court. So I don't know what the threat is, that we're going to vote them out, and I don't know. Then we vote Biden back in and what he'll do to them.
Biden back into
it's a threat, absolutely. But again, as a woman, he doesn't speak for me.
All right.
I think it's also because he was making statements specifically saying we're going to essentially codify Roe into the Constitution, saying, we're going to go above you.
Yeah, basically, we're going to ignore what you just ruled.
Right.
This is not the first time that these threats have been made against justices of the Supreme Court. Let's go to Chuck Schumer's.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
So if you decide the case the way we don't want you to, a whirlwind's going to happen, and you're not going to know what hit you. Now, this is the Senate Majority Leader, who was then the ranking member, the highest member of the Senate. This is a direct threat again to the Supreme Court. And you think about what then happened to Kavanaugh with the attempt on his life and all the protests that were going on, and this callousness in which the way they do it, Andy.
Well, this is fomenting rage, and this is something that Schumer's good at doing. He's been doing it for years and years and years. He did it then as minority leader when he was not the majority leader. But you call out the justice by name. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, you've released the whirlwind, and you don't know what'll hit you. What you're doing is saying we're going to come after you, and you're not going to know how or where it's going to come from. What a thing to say to a Supreme Court justice who cannot defend himself.
And, of course, then they leaked, or somebody leaked, the opinion in Roe versus in Dobbs, which overturned Roe. But so they're doing this, CC, both as a political mean, but also, they're trying to intimidate the court.
Yeah, well, we've seen him do it before, so I'm not shocked that they're trying it again. And he did it while they were sitting right there, speaking right to them. He basically says, with all due respect, which obviously he has no respect for them, because he threatens them during his State of the Union speech, which is despicable.
Not the first president that's done that. Let's listen to what Barack Obama said several years back.
With all due deference to separation of powers, last week the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. I don't think American elections should be bankrolled by America's most powerful interests, or worse, by foreign entities. They should be decided by the American people. And I'd urge Democrats and Republicans to pass a bill that helps correct some of these problems.
Okay, so that's, of course, it was a Citizens United case. But you know what, Logan? It's a pattern and practice here of these presidents and Democratic leaders to try to intimidate the court.
Yeah, intimidate the Supreme Court, specifically when you haven't had maybe enough of justice turnover to sway your opinion one way or the other as it's become more and more political. But also hearing those speeches, honestly, I mean, Barack Obama, here's what you got to say, didn't agree with anything he said in that. But I missed the fact that he could go up and make a speech that I could actually understand.
You liked his delivery.
He wasn't screaming at me. So you know what? It's weird to say that after last night I missed Barack Obama, but that's absolutely true. Because last night left with such a bad taste in, I think, American people's mouth. Just this rage and outrage, and not righteous outrage.
No, it was just mean.
Just being like, essentially attacking the
Nasty.
American people. And I really hated it. I can't say it was probably the worst one I've ever heard. I'll probably remember it forever. So maybe he got that across. Actually, I'll remember where I was when I listened to this. And I probably missed 10 minutes of it, putting my kids down. As probably a lot of people did. But with that, I still feel like I caught up with what was going on. It was like I missed a whole lot because it was just a slurring rage for 2 hours or an hour and a half. And then to be half an hour late and then to walk 20 minutes to get to the stage, it was a waste of time and a political show. The most campaign speech I've ever heard as a State of the Union speech.
One thing became clear. He's really afraid of Donald Trump because he never called him by name. It was my predecessor. I think he mentioned it 12 or
a lot.
13 times. Yeah. I mean, he really was concerned about that, and he was trying to draw that juxtaposition. Let's go ahead and take Bill's call.
Bill, you're on the air.
Personally, I felt like what one blogger said, and getting PTSD from the State of the Union scream. It sounded to me like a dictator is planning on packing the Supreme Court, if you ask me. It's scary.
Well, I wrote, the word I wrote down, Bill, in our pre-meeting here was scary and frightening. That's the two takeaways I had from it, because not only in tone, but in substance, and we're going to get into this Israel situation coming up next, this pier that they want to build, which I think is like we're asking for World War III. But it was a very scary and tone, Cece, and a frightening statements.
Yeah, not only did he threaten, the Supreme Court, but then he goes on to make sure that, listen, if Americans send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you I will restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again, which again is like Barack Obama. We're going to go around the Supreme Court and we're going to make the laws that we want to make, which we, of course, know that the Biden administration is very pro-abortion and that he's trying to run on that again.
And remember, they can do it. I mean, they could, if they had the House and the Senate and the White House, they could pass a bill that codifies Roe versus Wade, and that's not going to be overturned by the Dobbs decision, because Dobbs overturned a different or dealt with a different issue, which was, can the state restrict abortion access? And then you got federal law coming in there. Then you got supremacy clause issues. It would be very complicated. It would not be so easy. So these threats that they're making actually could have a result. I also think it was frightening, as we're gonna next time we're gonna get into the Israel stuff. We're about to set foot in a disaster there, Andy, I think.
Well, I think so. When you talk about piers and flotillas and you're talking about getting aid and supplies, first of all, are you going to really get them to the people who need them, or is Hamas going to intercept them? Let's start with that. But you got the Corps of Engineers building a floating pier in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of the port of Gaza, Gaza City, in the Ramallah region of Gaza. And how are you going to get those supplies across except by truck or by foot or by carrying them across? And you're making the American soldiers sitting ducks for the Gazans and the Houthis and whoever it is who's going to attack them. Do you think that Hamas and the Houthis and those who are sympathetic to the Iranians, their surrogates, are going to just sit there and watch American troops delivering aid and not do anything? That's stupid.
And I guess it's going to be brought in through the United Nations Relief Agency, which I need to let you know that we not only have a Freedom of Information Act demand out on that right now, but we are putting together a massive lawsuit against their C3. We'll talk more about that in the days ahead. But this is a good reason, Logan, for people to come alongside us and support the work of the ACLJ and our Life and Liberty Drive.
That's right. Be a part of this Life and Liberty Drive. We are involved in so many of the cases that you're hearing about each and every day. Whether you're watching the news, whether you're trying to stay informed, we're here for you. Whether that's defending Israel, whether that is our fight against the threats against even the Supreme Court of the United States you heard today. We ask you to support our work, and all donations made during our Life and Liberty Drive are matched and doubled. So any amount is doubled. ACLJ.org. Become an ACLJ champion while you're there, which is a monthly supporter that helps you fight alongside us every month and really creates a great baseline for us. This is very significant work, establishes a firm foundation for us going forward, and you can do it very easily. Go to ACLJ.org, have your gifts doubled.